Alejandro? Yes, please.
Well, I prefer to stand in order not to fall asleep. The afternoons are not... Oh, yes. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to give a brief explanation in this forum about the Spanish Consorcio, which is, in my view, a very peculiar and very successful example of PPP, how public and private parts of the industry may cooperate in order to fulfill the coverage of these difficult risks. Well, I have tried, since I think I had 15 minutes, but we are short of time, so I will try to devote 13 minutes, 1 minute per slide, to explain how the Consorcio works and trying to stress in some of those slides how this cooperation, this partnership is built. So the first idea is that we are an entirely public organization. We are not a pool of insurers. We are a public entity attached to the Ministry of Economy and linked to the Insurance Supervisory Authority. And well, with different functions, we not only we tackle with terrorism insurance coverage, but also with natural catastrophes. We are the MTPL Insurance Guarantee Fund of Spain. We are also backing by means of co-insurance and reinsurance the agricultural insurance scheme of Spain, which is a rather peculiar scheme also, and we are the Spanish IGS. We liquidate insolvent insurance undertakings in case of insolvency, of course. The second idea, the second feature is that we are a long-established institution. We were born in 1954. That means 3 years before the first European Football Cup that was, of course, won by Real Madrid. And so we don't follow any specific recent terrorist attack. The third feature is that we are an insurance undertaking. We are direct insurers. We are not, as far as catastrophe risks and terrorism insurance coverage are concerned, we are insurance, not reinsurance nor co-insurance, and we deal with damage to property, bodily injuries, and business interruption, those three parts of the business. We are, and this is very important to understand how we tackle with these risks. We are completely linked to extraordinary risk insurance. That means that there is not a specific cover for terrorism. Terrorism is one of the so-called extraordinary risks that are covered by the Consorcio. That means that Consorcio deals with natural disasters and with man-made disasters, and this is the list of risks that are covered by the CCS. Here we have the first example of how we cooperate between the private insurance sector and the public Consorcio. We made the decision that this list of risks are to be covered by the public entity called Consorcio, so that the private insurance undertakings do not have to bother about these situations. So extraordinary risks is a whole, and no separate cover exists for terrorist attacks. Now, fifth point, it is the compulsory nature of coverage. Difficult risks, so in order to fulfill with our commitments, we need a sufficient volume of premiums, which are called compulsory surcharges in favor of the CCS, and there is therefore a compensation amongst exposed risks and non-exposed risks from a point of view of geographical criteria, historical criteria, and different types of risks such as household, commercial properties, industrial activity, and so on. And the rates are a percentage of the sums insured in the policies. So the companies, here is a very good second example of how we deal with the cooperation, the partnerships, the PPP system, whereby companies, the insurance companies, collect these premiums, these surcharges, and they, once they collect them, they transfer them on a monthly basis to the Consorcio, and receiving a handling or a commission fee of 5%. So 95% of the premiums are transferred to the Consorcio, and 5% of the premiums are retained by the private insurer. Why? Because it is the insurer who is collecting those premiums. Here is a third example of how we cooperate. It is the insurance undertaking, the private insurance undertaking, that issues the policy. The Consorcio does not issue policies at all. So in Spain, there are two insurance contracts in the same policy. In the same policy, you have, on the one hand, the ordinary risks policy with the different clauses of this contract about life, accidents, fire, theft, and the extraordinary risks, terrorism, flooding, severe windstorms, earthquakes, and so on. There is a compulsory coverage clause included in all the policies in the market. And those coverage clauses of the extraordinary risks speak about the CCS, speak about the need of paying a compulsory surcharge, and that compulsory surcharge is collected along with the premium, the receipt, and transferred, as I previously mentioned, to the CCS. The definition of terrorism, just to say that there is a definition included in the Spanish insurance legislation, so we have an automatic cover. We are not waiting until the court decision in order to state that whether the act has been a terrorist attack or not. And we also have to bear in mind that the cover is in the Spanish territory, except in the case of bodily injuries. The Consorcio pays compensation in case of bodily injuries, in case of death, of disability, in the case of a resident, a Spanish resident that has suffered a terrorist attack worldwide. So we have paid compensation in the case, for instance, of terrorist attacks in Tunisia, terrorist attacks to the Spanish army in Iraq or Afghanistan, and at the same way we have paid compensation in the case of earthquakes or tsunamis that have taken place in other countries on planet Earth. The terms of compensation are the same as the private insurance policy. I mean that we pay compensation according to the sums insured in the policy, according to the clauses and the same compensation conditions than those in the policy, with some exceptions that are provided in the Spanish legislation, such as deductibles. The deductibles, there are no deductibles in the case of motor vehicles, houses, and homeowners associations. There is a 7% of the compensable losses in the case of commercial property or industries or civil work, and no deductibles for bodily injuries, and there is no exception in the case of loss of profits or business interruption. We apply the same deductible that is included for ordinary risks in the policy. There are some exclusions. There are some branches of the business that are not included in the system: marine, aviation, transport, third-party liability, health, agricultural insurance, as I previously mentioned, is backed by the CCS, by the Consorcio, but with a different scheme. And this is very important. I mentioned that we are direct insurers, not co-insurers nor reinsurers, so we handle the claim thoroughly. The report of the claim, and the claim has to be filed through our organization to means or call center or website. And this is very important because many of these claims are filed by the private insurer or the insurance intermediary on behalf of the insured that has been injured or has been damaged. The assessment of losses is carried out by a network of freelancers that cooperate with the CCS, and also the claims handling is done by means of some teams of Consorcio's claims handlers throughout 18 regional offices, and the payment is by bank transfer. The system has been already tested by significant events. We were born in 1954. We have had for decades ETA's terrorist attacks, and well, we had also the Islamic Madrid trains bombing in 2004, where we had 191 people killed and nearly 2,000 people injured. And we dealt with this terrorist attack with our claims handlers and with our medical practitioners for the evaluation of bodily injuries. Since 1987, if we bear in mind the total amount of compensation from extraordinary risks, as far as the property damage line is concerned, 6% of material damage is due to terrorist attacks, whereas in the case of personal injuries, 92% of the total amount paid by the CCS, by the Consorcio, is due to different terrorist attacks. And, well, the system is very stable. We have the yearly cover with no variation depending on the market, and the cover is regulated in our official journal. And to finish, the system is backed by the state guarantee. No maximum loss that the CCS will pay. In case the claims exceed the reserves, the CCS can in turn draw funds from the government, although the reserves have never been exhausted and the state guarantee has never been applied for the time being. And to end with, I would like to stress the idea that the Consorcio is not also, according to the Spanish law, backed by the Spanish state. It is backed by the Spanish insurance industry. There is a daily cooperation between the private sector and the CCS, so that the CCS is a sort of bridge between the private insurance sector, the CCS that deals with these catastrophe risks, and the Spanish governmental authorities who deal with terrorist attacks and handle with the police forces and so on. So this is all. I don't know if it was 13 minutes, 12, 14. It's okay. How many?
No, I don't know.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.